Hi, my name is Anna Akunto from the University of Texas at Austin, and in this video I'll talk about a variety of behavior management strategies used in the Pirate Math Equation Quest intervention. We use these strategies to manage and prevent challenging behavior. These strategies are used in all three of the interventions: the individual intervention with total difference and change schemas, the small group intervention with total difference, change, and equal group schemas, and the STAR tutoring test prep intervention where total difference, change, and equal group schemas. However, although they are and can be used in all three, they may provide to be the most useful in the group interventions. Also note that these behavioral management strategies are by no means a comprehensive list, but they do highlight a few helpful ways to support teachers as they implement the intervention. So the behavior management strategies I'm going to present are used throughout all 5 components of the Pirate Math Equation Quest intervention: Math Fact Flashcards, Equation Quest, Buccaneer Problems, Shape Sorting, and Jolly Roger Review. It's also important to note that these strategies should be used in combination with each other and not alone. So the first behavior management strategy I'm going to talk about is the ripple effect. The ripple effect is the idea that if you compliment one student, then all the other students will follow. So for example, think about this picture. Think about throwing a pebble into a bucket of water. You know, once the pebble hits the water, you see the ripples. Once you compliment one student, the others will follow, trying to model what that original student was doing. So when you do compliment the students, it's important to be clear and explicit with your praise. You want to say things like "I see" and "notice," and not things like "I like" or "I love." We want the students to not seek validation from the adult giving the praise. We want the students to seek validation from completing the task. So an example of good praise would be, "Oh, I noticed you're working really hard to count up," or "I see you're using the run poster to set up this word problem." A poor example would be, "Good job," or "I love how you're doing that." We want to avoid things like that and give really clear and specific praise using "I see" and "I notice." It's also really important to be positive and not punitive. Students react much more strongly and are more likely to complete the task you'd like them to do if you're praising them for things they're doing well. The second strategy is getting to know you. So when you first meet students, it's important to establish positive, trusting relationships with them. You should greet students when they walk in, ask questions, share stories with them, and really try to build a rapport and a relationship with them. Intervention sessions are going to run much more smoothly when you understand the interests and the unique needs of your students, which you can only understand by getting to know them. And the next strategy is the ABC chart, or the ABCs. So this is based on the idea that every child misbehaves for a specific reason. And in order to find that reason or figure out what's triggering the student, it's important to break down the events surrounding the behavior to understand why it's occurring and how to prevent it in the future. So first you should determine the behavior. What's the behavior that's happening that you don't want to occur? So for example here, we see that Samuel rips his paper in half. So then you also want to determine the antecedent of the behavior, what's happening right before the behavior occurs, and the consequence, what's happening right after the behavior occurs. So right before Samuel rips his paper, the teacher tells Samuel to complete problem A. Then Samuel rips his paper, and next we need to determine the consequence, or what happens directly after the behavior. So the consequence here is Samuel can't complete the problem, he escapes the task. So then this leads us to hypothesize that Samuel's ripping his paper so that he no longer has to do the work. So there are 2 things we can do to avoid having this behavior occur in the future. The first thing is to change the antecedents in place to avoid the behavior. So in this case, the antecedent is the teacher tells Samuel to complete problem A. So while the teacher can't let Samuel not do the problem, we can't really do an antecedent intervention in this example. But the consequence here is that he rips his paper, the consequence is that he no longer has to do the work after he rips his paper. So here we could change the consequence where, regardless if Samuel rips his paper, he does need to complete the work each time. So we break the relationship between the behavior and the consequence. And in the future, Samuel knows the behavior won't be effective, and so he will no longer rip his paper. So our next behavior management strategy is called "What's the Word?" So before you even get into the top secret word, it's really important at the start to set clear expectations at the outset of the intervention using the Pirate Math rules. This lets students know what's expected of them. And once students know what's expected of them, you can also create a student-created secret word. So examples would be like together, superstars, empowers, smarties. And once you've created the secret word with students, you can use it later on as a way, almost as an attention getter, or as a way to refocus students when things get a little loud or out of control and students need to take a moment to recenter themselves. So for example, if the class is getting really loud and noisy, or your tutoring group, you've already established that your secret word is Smarties, you can whisper the secret word to help redirect students and get their attention back on task. It can also be used as a way to praise students. So say you're working with the student and they're just really doing awesome, you can be like, yes, Smarties, and fist bump it, and it also acts as praise. The next behavior strategy is the choice is yours. So here you want to offer students choices. This allows them to feel like they have some control over a situation and puts the onus on the students for the decision. You know, if you tell us, for example, you can offer a student, do you want to do problem A or problem B? We can start with either one, but we need to pick one of them to work on. And this puts some of the onus on the students. You know, this is what you chose, this is your choice, so we need to finish it. And again, it allows them to have some control over the situation. All right, so the next behavior management strategy is ignore to extinguish. So in this strategy, you want to ignore any behavior you want to extinguish or any behavior you want to stop. So if a student is acting out, instead of reprimanding the student or yelling at the student, it's best to just ignore them. The reason for this is sometimes a student will act out for negative attention, which is a form of attention, but includes if you're yelling at them or scolding them, you're only reinforcing the behavior. So in order to extinguish this behavior, you want to ignore it. You know, oftentimes another problem is that oftentimes in a group setting, the teacher may ignore the behavior, but other students in the group may provide attention to the student. So for example, a student may be interrupting the teacher as they speak, and this teacher may be able to ignore the student, but other students in the group may be laughing at the student, which is still reinforcing their behavior. So in this case, it's best to tell other students in the group, hey, we're all gonna ignore so-and-so until they're ready to rejoin us. This next one is called Who's the Boss? Remember, at the end of the day, you are the adult, so you want to avoid arguing with the child. You do not want to involve yourself in a power struggle with the child. Simply disengage. You can always pull the child aside to talk privately or discuss it with the child at the end of the lesson. Remember, you are the adult. Finally, we have proximity. So for students who may get easily distracted or often present challenging behaviors, place yourself near them. Sit next to the student, have them seated next to you while you're teaching. The closer you physically are to the student, the less likely the student is to exhibit off-task behaviors. It's also important here to separate students who may distract each other in a group setting or who feed off each other. So place other students who won't feed off each other in between them as a buffer zone. So in this video, I discussed the different behavior management strategies that can be implemented in the Pirate Math Equation Quest interventions. I'd like to thank IES, the University of Texas at Austin, and the Meadow Center for Preventing Educational Risk. Without their support, this research would not have been possible. Thanks for watching.